All right. So first of all, thank you, Jyoti, for being on the Wisdom Show, and it's such an honor for me to have you. For those of you who are listening or watching, Jyoti is my spiritual teacher. I met her in the year, I think, 2014, and ever since then, um, she has played a very instrumental role in guiding me in my spiritual walk. So I'm really grateful that she's on this show with us today. Just a little bit of her background as well. So she's the founder of Center for Sacred Studies. That's where I actually studied and became a minister of walking prayer at the 2-year program. And she's also the founder for The Fountain, which is now doing some amazing work with the indigenous people. So I'll have her speak a little bit about that during our interview. But once again, I'm so excited to have you here with us.
Oh, I'm humbled that you would think of me this way. I'm very excited to be able to participate in what you're creating here, because I think it's a seed ready for planting in this very significant time we're living in. So thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you for your wisdom. And that's the reason you're here, because I know how much you've guided me and supported me in my own journey. And I know, it will be beneficial for our listeners or people who are watching our show to learn from you. So, and I think the main thing that I really wanted you to share today, it's talking about what's going on right now from, with the coronavirus. This time has been called the Great Pause. Some has called this a Great Awakening. And like you said, this is planting the seed, right? So if you could just share with us, from this spiritual perspective, what is going on right now?
Well, that's a little question with a big answer, right? And I'm a storyteller right up at the beginning, so I'm just going to let the story share more about what I think is happening now. And my story goes back some 30 plus years when Spirit really guided my husband and I, Russell Park, into establishing a spiritual community in 1995. And we had been working in the field of helping bring awakening processes inside of people forward. We've been given some tools, a breathwork that's called Maya Tree, that really helps to heal and open and connect you to your soul's purpose. And right then it was, she kind of had when I look back at it, she actually had this statement she's been making through our community for 30 plus years, which is kind of fascinating, but I didn't really realize it until just a couple of years ago when I began to really kind of look back. And she started by wake them up, wake the people up, wake yourself up. And then she said, live in a spiritual community, getting closer to the earth again, coming back to those original principles of how to live on the earth in a sacred way and honor all life, and create a field of reciprocity so that life balances itself. And then she took us further down the trail, and we ended up, because of 9/11, a lot of ways that we were protecting what we care for, these earth-based ways of prayer. We needed to create a church, and that's how the Centers of Sacred Studies came into play. And then she said, when I was having to answer all these questions from the government about going about opening up a religious organization, is what they call us. They said I needed ministers, and so it was like, that's how the ministers came. And then she told me into the program with the ministers, she said, there'll come a time you need to build a virtual village, because there'll come a time when you won't be able to travel anymore. And those ministers will be planted by me in all the places that I need them, so that when that time comes, I can still move my waves of consciousness through them, and they can disperse them across the lands. So now we have 250, I think 57 ministers that are placed in many different countries around the planet. And now I understand what she meant when she said that way back then, although I didn't back then, you see. And then we kept walking up the trail, and the next thing that she wanted us to do was to really activate the grandmother archetype on the planet. because that wisdom needed to come back into play to help us remember that first grandmother, as the way my elders tell me, there is a first grandmother that dreamed us all into place, and she's still dreaming us today. And it's up that line that those grandmothers that later were called the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers came together, and we walked a decade with them, helping to grow that movement and to serve the prayer of unity amongst all nations. And we went to all of their different home places, modeling that all these different diversive ways of prayer could still sit at the table and find a way of unifying, because this is one planet with one people with one heart. And that's what we're returning to, is an understanding, a memory of that lives inside of each and every one of us, actually. And then just before the grandmothers would kind of individuate and start to fly on their own, she gave me the seed called the fountain, and she said it was time to restore an economic model that was based on reciprocity and collaboration and guided by nature and the sacred. And so that took us down into Colombia to meet with the Mamos, because the main cord of the fountain has come from the Mamos. The Mamos are, for those of you that haven't heard of them, you may have heard of the Kogi, because there are 4 original peoples there in Colombia. And we've worked with 3 of the 4 original peoples. And the Kogi came off their mountain where they had not been discovered yet by the West, and came because the mother said, you must go to help your younger brother, they're getting lost. And so they brought these teachings of those original principles back. And so over the last 8 years of the fountain, that's when we started it 8 years ago, we have only deepened my relationships with the Mamos, and the instruction the earth gives us is how we've gone about restoring this economic model. And so we're at this place now. When she gave it to me, she said, now this will be the point at the end of your sentence. I didn't know what that meant. Did that mean, oh, I'm all done with my work and I get to go home? Or I asked one of my elders about it, and she said, she leaned her head back and laughed and said, no, then she'll just give you another sentence. But what's so fascinating is that as she's putting this point at the end of this exclamation point, actually, this exclamation mark of the sentence she's been growing through our community for 30 years, and that we've been serving as instruments to help her put into this 3D reality, that she's landing it so profoundly right now in this moment we're in. Now, the Kogi told us that the ending was falling into the beginning, and the beginning would roll out in 2026. Now, that's only 6 years from now. And that would roll out with those individuals and organizations and movements that were based on original principle being heart, reciprocity, collaboration, unity, and all life is sacred. That's those original principles. So what I've been noticing over the last year or so has been that many of us that have been carrying these threads, if you will, to this carpet she's weaving, we've been cultivating them for 30, 40, 50 years. And now all of a sudden we're standing in the same room together, and we're bringing our puzzle piece to the table. We're declaring it. And as we do, and we recognize and identify that puzzle piece, we lay it on the table. And as each of us does that, all of a sudden a puzzle comes together, and we all begin to collectively see what the Great Mother's been weaving, that we've been in service to. And we're at one of those moments, because as the Kogi's prophecy went on, it went on to say that as the ending is falling, it's important to stay informed, but stay focused on what is breaking through. We stay informed by the ending so we can walk through this and be mindful of it, but we must focus on what is breaking through. And so what I see happening right now is that breaking through is already occurring. And many of those people that were bringing those threads for so long are sitting at those tables, people from all different walks of life, of great import, amazing networks of people that are really ready to think out of the box. the coronavirus, as the mamos talk about it, is an old one that has come in here to really massage us out of our fear and to break up the illusion of what we think we are all about, so we can start to remember who we are. So it's a very significant time. Our prophecies are instructions for how to walk through these times. They've prepared us over the years, and they've informed us of what things are coming. And the way that those prophecies and the teachings of the indigenous right now is, this is the time we've all been preparing for. And it's time to stand up in it firmly in ourselves and realign with that original line with the Mother Earth, listening to her instruction. Because if we do that and we step into one moment at a time and bring our full presence into that moment, then we receive what she brings us, and then we take the next moment and putting our full presence and receive what she brings us. That will create the rhythm to walk with the earth in her instruction, and she will take us through the portal. There was something that just went out kind of virally, and I received it. It was supposedly a channeling from White Eagle. And I can't remember the whole of it, but the main core of it was, we're going through a portal. If you get lost in the little thoughts and things of your mind, where you get caught in your fears and your worries and your confusion, then you'll go down the rabbit hole. You'll go down the hole rather than through the portal. So it's very important right now that we stand firmly in ourselves and that we return to our own authenticity, because each and every one of us, when we stand in our authenticity, are the most potent players in this game. So that's what I know about this moment that we're in. They also say that depending on when she unplugged us, we were on our way to follow some instruction we've been given in bringing about what's called the Mother Earth Delegation of United Indigenous Nations. It had started, it's a much longer story I can share with you if you want me to, but the gist of it is that we were about to meet in Stockholm. We were going to see what did the Mother need us to do, what form, how we were going to organize ourselves, how we would organize some of the issues going forward with how to care for this earth quickly, because now we're in a quickening stage. When the bands came and we couldn't go, one of our Aboriginal elders, her name is Jing Key, she said, I'm receiving the message that it's time for all of us to sit in our 0 points. And in those 0 points, we must light our sacred fires once again for ourselves and our families and our communities. We must declare our own sovereignty in this. Then one of our other delegates, Louisa Tish, she did a divining. She's an African priestess. She did a divining. And they told her that the hand of the ancestors was on this movement. This movement meaning all of what we're doing right now, this movement we're collectively taking right now. And that it was important for us to bring, and I found these words so interesting, it was important for us to bring our feminine militaristic strategy into play. And then they went on to describe what that was, to tell us a little more. It meant, they said, that all the light workers that were getting activated need to fully activate themselves, and as they did, their full spiritual maturity would arrive, so that they could firmly plant themselves and keep that focus, very intense focus, on where the Mother was carrying us, where she was taking us, not being distracted by the little parts of ourselves, the parts that get nervous or worried or any of that. None of those pieces we had to maintain that focus. We had to maintain that focus through everything, no matter what went on around us, around the world, and what was happening, because that truly was what we had come to do. That was our service. So that's kind of a quick piece of the story. There's so much more of the story, but does that at least answer the first question?
Yes, it does. There's so much, there's a lot of wisdom in there. Like I myself am taking notes, and I know some of this you've shared with me already. I'm just also we talked about, you talked about being focused and like firmly stand in our authentic self. I think one of the questions that I would like to ask you is, I know there are a lot of people too has reached out to me because of what's going on, and a lot of fear has surfaced, right? And I get that, part of it is us working through that. But is there any advice or suggestion that you can give for those who are experiencing it? That it's quite overwhelming right now for some. I know it can be very overwhelming, and especially being isolated as well, being by yourself, not being able to be with other people. So I would love if you could share, what would you suggest or advise?
Well, that's a really good question, and it's a really significant one because, the part that's making this so intense is it's so surreal. I'm 72 years old. I've never seen a moment when the whole planet stopped. And what we've seen when the whole planet stopped, if you take a moment in this moment of pause, you're going to see that the waters got clear. You're going to see that dolphins started swimming outside of Venice because the pollution in the water lessened itself. There have been skies that people have seen open and blue, and they've been able to see mountains they didn't know were there before because of all of the pollution that we were creating with our fast moving pace in our life without thinking about it. The birds in the morning, I love to get up right before dawn anymore because there's the chorus of birds outside. They're singing, they're heralding the brand new day that's coming. So if you can take a moment, fear is mind-made. It's mind-made. There certainly is a primitive fear that lives in us when our life is threatened, and it can jump into play. And some of that is probably stirred into the mix of this as well. But if we take a moment to realize, if we change our lens and we start to look at what's breaking through, we start to celebrate what the earth is telling us by showing how she's taken, there are less movements under the earth with the shakings and all of that. Everything she's doing is saying, she's kind of going, ah. So all of a sudden you can begin to relate to her more like a living being. And you can begin to watch what she's trying to tell us by what's happening in the moment of pause that we're taking. And you can start to, whenever I get nervous or something like that, the way Spirit gave it to me is I just touch my heart and I say update, because I want to live in my heart. When I'm in my heart fully, there is no fear there. When I'm in my full presence in my heart, there is no fear there. When I'm not, then my mind is acting, and it's usually looking ahead, afraid of what's going to happen, or it's looking behind with regret about what it wished it could have done. But then it's taken itself out of the present moment. That's why she's calling those light warriors, the ones that can focus and firmly plant themselves in those present moments. So your spiritual practice right now that will cultivate how you can bring your presence into your present moment would be the best antidote for our times. Certainly we're survivors, if you will. So when you look at your life, ones that are listening to us talking today are the ones that know that they can survive things. They wouldn't be sitting in this circle with us. So they already know that, have that skill, that ability. The Yupik say that we're leaving out of these bottom chakras where we learned about our primal needs as animals, because we are first animal beings with our bodies. And we learned that. And now they say we're jumping from those bottom chakras, from that third chakra where power was what we were learning, and fully into our hearts. It's a huge leap. But once we move that into that heart, that's when we start our true ascension. And we are in a very amazing moment right now. In India, they have clocks on the wall, and those clocks go like from 12 to 1 is 2,500 years. from 1 to 2 is another 2,500 years. And so it goes all the way around the clock for 26,000 years. And that very last little sliver, they call that the Kali Yuga, because it's the time when the ending of this 26,000 year cycle is completing itself and the ending is falling down into the beginning. The earth has been through, this is her 6th extinction process. She's been through this 5 times before. So she knows how to do this. We're not going to save her. We're not going to keep, there's nothing we can do to make that extinction process stop. It is what it is. So then if we put on our new lens and we start to really realign with the mother, then we know that she knows how to go through this. So I'm going to walk real close to her so that we can get through this. And we are getting through this. It's, I'm not a doomsday prophet, but I'm real in what I've been taught, in what I've learned, and what I sit in. And I sit in one part of a big circle. So I don't have the way for always. I would never, ever say that. But I do have a voice for one of the ways that we can sit in that circle. And when we honor each other's voice in that circle, then we get wiser and we get more inclusionary in our process of choicing. And we get more awake in our choicing. So I think it's about wake up, fall in love with yourself. There are many of you that have people in your circle that have all the skills you need, because we have everything we need right here. So you might need to take salt baths more regularly so that all this energy that's flying everywhere around right now, while we're squeezing out all the fear that lived in us, and we're looking at all the places where the cracks were in the place that was falling down. And we got also to know that, okay, it's a process. It's like a birth. Now I just need to care for myself. I need to take the right time to be in retreat with myself so I can talk to myself, make relation with myself, take salt baths and rub with lavender or rose oils or rose sprays that will also help quiet your system, drinking chamomile tea that will quiet the nervous system down. So there are different things and tools that I know Rain has and has great wisdom in that can really help you in just getting through one day at a time as you stay in the moment.
Thank you so much. There's so many nuggets there itself. I know, yeah, you've been encouraging me to take my bath with lavender and rose recently too. Because what I myself am going through, despite the work that I've done, yet I can feel some of my really deep down unconscious stuff surfacing, or some collective consciousness stuff, like unconscious stuff that's surfacing on my end. So you mentioned that the Kogi talk about 2026, and I'm sure those who are listening will be wondering, so what's going to happen in the next 6 years, right? So I'm curious too, what will happen, or what, because I know that we're to stand firm, to walk through the portal, but is there anything that we're anticipating that's coming through the next 6 years?
Well, you see, that would be our mind wanting to run ahead of where we are. So I would caution you about that. I would say stay in the present moment. The instruction is coming. Listen to our First Nation peoples globally. They know and have this direct dialogue with the Mother Earth. They have a relationship with this kind of time that we're living in. And if we can listen to their direction and follow it, then we'll get through this just fine. We will have to go through some things. It depends on what we choose as a collective, It's how bumpy the road will be dependent upon our collective choicing. And we don't have control over this. I mean, that's the thing that feels scary to people, because all of a sudden we have to give this false kind of illusion that we have control anyway, and come back to the reality that if we just stay here in the moment and fill it up with gratitude. Gratitude is the highest form of prayer. and lean into your community, because that's when we have our very human days when we wobble. Everyone does. I lean into my community. I share with my community. I process things so they don't stay stuck in me. And many of you that are sitting in circles like this one are also very highly sensitive. And so you're picking up and clearing a lot of the things that are clearing out of people that aren't so conscious with their processing yet. And you've just really got to know yourself and be aware of that so that you can care for yourself and cleanse those things regularly, more regularly. Take those sea salt baths, because the sea salt has a natural kind of way. You put just about a hand in a very, very hot tub and you soak in it. And when you unplug it, it's pulled all the negativity out of your auric field and out of your system, and it goes right down the drain. So it's one way of really purifying and clearing ourselves. If you have a ceremony, if you have different kinds of ceremony or different ways of prayer, different ways that you are able to tap into the source, then that's the place that I go. Whenever I get in a wobble moment, I try to go and find that moment, get quiet and still, and tap into that source, because that's really where the heart of ourselves lives. You know, all the other things we put on because we were enculturated that way by our society, by our parents, by our family systems, by our cultural systems. We've all been enculturated over all these 26,000 years, and all of that's starting to crack and fall down so we can come back to that original being of who we are. And so that's a happy dance moment. Even in the middle of the chaos, it's a happy dance moment, you know? And that's where true safety lies, is in that reconnection with source.
Oh, thank you for answering. You've answered quite a bit of the question I have wanted to ask you. And I think the other thing that, you know, as I was walking and in my own journey of spiritual growth, I remember, like I mentioned in the beginning, you were instrumental when I started having dreams and experiences that I couldn't even explain. And I'm like, what is going on? And I don't understand, right? And so I would love if you could just share for someone who is kind of new and embarking on this walk with the mother, or, you know, really just starting out, you know, really connected to their higher self and all that. If you could just share with them, you know, what could be something they could start with. Yesterday, Zach and I, we were preparing for preparing for our Friday video. And we were playing, and one of the things he said, how do I know I'm listening to the right thing? One of the question that was asked too, right? So if you just share your wisdom around, what I've just asked.
So the way I would want to answer your question is that the way I start my day sometimes helps me. It influences how it flows the rest of the day. So if you go outside, take a glass of water, which is our life. Water is life, huh? It's our very sacred element here on this planet. So much of this planet is made of water. So much of us is made of water. So you go outside and you face the sun that's rising, this brand new day that's dawning, and you take a moment to just say a prayer, give gratitude for the beginning of a new day. A whole new set of possibilities are going to come. Challenges will come, but life will come. And so you're giving really great thanks for that, whatever your heart wants to say, however it wants to express it. When you're all through with that morning prayer of gratitude, then you're going to give the earth 1, 2, 3, 4 drinks of water. And then you're going to take some water yourself, and you can have your companion out there. They share the water. Your children can be out there. Your puppies and kitties can be out there. Everybody can have a drink of this blessed water. And as the water goes in, you know, it's got power in it now, this water. And so it gets to go inside of you and bring a stillness, bring that gratitude in all the cellular system of your body. and then you can start your day. So that's one way of really moving through these times, by staying in that moment, by setting that point of gratitude. I think the other part for me would be, because of how we've been enculturated, we've been trained to be in the mind so much of the time, that so much of our work, as Grandmother Aggie used to say, is to take the most important spiritual journey of all, and that's for the mind to go into the heart. Because they say when the mind dies into the heart, then and only then are you really home. So when we allow ourselves to just be in our sacred witness more, to witness when we go into the mind and come out of the heart, then you can update, stay in the heart. Those are simple practices that can really, really make a difference. And it can give you a sense of like you've got a rudder on your ship, that you have a way of guiding and navigating this boat as it's going down life's river. Look around, because you've manifested your life. You before you put your skin on, you had a soul plan that you were bringing to activate in this life. And now we're all here, and we are the ones we've been waiting for. We're waking up in this moment. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And so trust that. And look around and see what you called into play. You called this circle into play. You called a community into play that you can lean into as you do the really important work of our lives, which is our soul work, which is cleaning all those karmic ties and things away from us and letting them go, so that we can really come back to that full authenticity of who we are. This is a school we're in, it's a school. So when our lesson is all done, when our soul's lesson is complete, then we go home until we put a skin on and come again. But this is such a significant moment in history that many of us are coming and waking at this moment in time, because we've done it before and we're returning to do it again. We're in service to evolution and life moving forward. So it's a moment where you can stay humble about that task at hand. And humility is good, because it's the key to heaven, is the way I was told. Stay humble, it's the key to heaven. So you're coming into a circle of remembering, and there are others around you that aren't remembering yet. And so that will also be what you have to really open your understanding around, and tolerance. Because consciousness isn't something we can make happen in people. We can't make people wake up. You can't shake them and wake them. It doesn't work like that. Consciousness is something that is rising within each person according to their own soul's evolution. And the way it was told to me is, when that moment happens, when the soul is strong enough to hold its own numinosity, then and only then does it awaken. And so we're in a big moment of awakening, because this is a surrealistic moment, and we have choicing. We really do have choices here. How do you want to choose? Do you want to choose love, or do you want to choose fear? You can choose it. And every time the fear comes up, you can just witness, oh, there's that scary part again, love or fear. And then really work to move yourself into the love. Sometimes I have to put on a movie that makes my heart move, because it makes me fall in love with something again. Sometimes I'm sitting with my grandchild and I'm thinking, I'm just whooped woman and I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. And my grandchild puts her little hand up on me and says, I love you, Gigi. I'm back in my heart so quick, So it's looking for those moments that will allow you to light your love. Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. I think that's really important, because there are days I feel like I can't do this, and you and I talk because um, um, you've been supporting me and we talk at least twice a month. And there are days that my mind goes into overdrive, right? And then it takes over. And I remember you told me just be present, accept what is happening right now as is. And I love that you just reminded me. It's about coming back to our heart. Once we're present in our heart again, then it's not about figure out what's coming or what's next. It's just here, staying true, staying in our power, and staying in love, and just keep being that. So yes, so thank you for sharing that.
So what you can really do is reframe it that the moment we're in is a healing crisis. If many of you in this circle are probably healers and have worked in those ways, when you're working with somebody, more than likely, most of the time, if they've got some real serious illness, they're going to have to go through a healing crisis. It's when the fever gets the highest, when the body is really doing a moment with itself in order to restore itself later. We're in a moment of a healing crisis here. And if we can stay steady in it, if we can stay in our hearts with it, if we can keep choosing love, not fear, then we will determine the healing that can go forward, because we are the balm. We are the balm of the time. We have that kind of possibility that's living in us as a collective global village. And I've already seen where we're going. It's quite beautiful. So keep talking to each other, keep loving each other, sit at your sacred fire, get you some sacred, gather some cedar is a good way to sit at the fire when you're having those moments, and just really give all those feelings, everything, without any judgment. Just let the feelings come through and be what they are, and then give them to the fire and throw some cedar behind it, so it'll just help it move itself on, and you can be back in your heart again.
Thank you so much.